Well, welcome everyone to Our Great Minds, where energy and innovation converge to create a sustainable new energy future. I'm your host, Tina Olivero. Today, we're shining the spotlight on ASL Energy and ASL Innovations, two companies under the same group making waves in the world energy and access space. Joining me today is Noah Zanbilowicz, who is the president of ASL, located right here in St. John's, Newfoundland. Noah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tina. I'm excited to be here.
So let's dive right in. Maybe you can give us a bit of background on how you got involved with ASL and what your vision was for the company and where things are sort of up to date. Maybe let us know about Thomas, your partner. Give us the background as a place to start.
Sure. So I actually founded the original ASL as Archetype Solutions Limited back in 2012 with a close friend of mine, and over the years we grew and changed, and then back in 2022, Thomas TJ Green and I merged our two companies to form what is now ASL Energy, and TJ was working on composite matting and remote access. And he was trying to create a viable solution, which is cost effective and environmentally conscious to get access to remote places in Newfoundland and really anywhere in the world. I was working in my core background, which is facility management, consulting, that sort of thing. And we were just doing so much work together that's what allowed us to merge our companies, and we had a shared vision, and it really took off from there. And that's what ASL Energy started off as. And we also were both committed to innovation, to finding new and exciting solutions to problems that we saw out there. And one of those innovations was the Composite Airport System. And we saw a need to create or to ensure continued access to Canada's north. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but the primary reason is that there's really only one jet that services gravel runways. It's the 737-200. It's roughly 60 years old. There are very few of them still operating. There's only about a dozen in Canada and only about 200 worldwide. And that number is dwindling. They're not in production anymore. And you could picture, the old jets like a 737-200 have very small turbines mounted way high on the wings, as compared to the modern ones where it's inches off the ground. They're massive turbines and they can't land on gravel. And TJ saw that these communities in northern Canada were going to be relegated to either reduced service or going all the way back down to a propeller. And if you're going to a propeller aircraft as compared to a jet, you're looking at half the range, half the speed, half the cargo, and a tenth of the passengers. And so in these northern communities where access and food surety is already a huge issue, this is going to be devastating. And so TJ started investigating it. And then at one point, someone came up to our booth and said, can you land a plane on these? And TJ said yes. And that was the birth of ASL Innovations, where we're taking these high density polyethylene mats and turning them into a modular runway for northern Canada.
That's amazing. Okay, so that is the innovation part of the company. Let's just take a look at the ASL Energy for a second. What does that look like?
So ASL Energy is really our core operations. So we're working closely with a variety of firms in the energy sector, both in new hydrogen development, which is really exciting in Newfoundland here, but also in the more traditional fossil fuel side of things and offshore oil. So we provide reports and management support. We also provide facility inspections and operations. So my background is I ran the Bull Arm site for almost 5 years, and I'm bringing all that expertise into ASL Energy to to really find efficiencies and help companies reduce their costs, but really maximize the service to their clients as well.
Mhm. Now, the Bull Arm site is the construction site of the first oil and gas project here in Newfoundland, Hibernia, where I think it was $5.2 billion construction project that happened there. So the magnitude of these mega projects are absolutely huge. And we've just had the sanction or environmental green light of the first wind energy project here. So as we were just discussing, it's kind of like an amazing time to be in Newfoundland because it's like first we had oil and gas, now we have wind energy. It's almost like a whole other realm of possibilities starting here for our whole energy ecosystem, which is major contractors, billions and billions of investment, lots of opportunity when it comes to subcontractors, suppliers, et cetera. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, it's an incredibly exciting time to be here in Newfoundland. Obviously, we're biased, but I think that this is the place to be in Canada for the present and for the next decades. I think we're poised to do some incredible work on a global scale, and not just because we have facilities like Bull Arm, but because we have the right people, we have the resources, and we're ready for it. It's a really exciting time to be in Newfoundland.
For sure. So now we have a great base of oil and gas, and we're for the first time in our history, we have a product, hydrogen, wind energy, that's being sought out after from buyers around the world, and we haven't even produced it yet. So it's a very, very lucrative place for us to be. Um, and then that is going to sort of shape the whole landscape of how our companies, your company, are all going to be able to avail of these opportunities. There'll be partnerships, joint ventures, all kinds of new opportunities and possibilities sputting up. So this is absolutely the place to be. And your office is right downtown, St. John's.
We are. I don't think we ever expected that we'd have offices on Water Street. We've always been, working to minimize costs so that we can pass that savings on to our clients. But the time was right, and we're so excited to be down here on Water Street and looking out on the harbor. It's a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, I agree. I'm downtown as well. So, part of your strategy was to create a company with an Aboriginal status. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so ASL Energy is very proudly not just a certified Aboriginal owned corporation, but also female owned,
Okay.
and it's a part of who we are, and it's a part of what we do. So we really want to support communities and obviously Aboriginal groups across the province and across Canada, but we also want to act as an example of what can be done. We are a successful company that happens to be Aboriginal, and we're very proud of that. Our chairperson and one of our co-founders is Ashley Green, and she's Indigenous.
Okay, fantastic. So, what type of projects then do you see specifically you will be working on with that in the energy side of it, not the composite? We'll get into that shortly, but from the energy perspective, what projects do you see are on the horizon specifically for the energy division?
Within ASL Energy, we have some really exciting opportunities ahead. There's some big, places that are available. There's opportunities for some facility management, but there's also the Beta Nord project is still there. I mean, it's been delayed, but it's still running along in the background, and we're seeing
Mhm.
some action from Equinor. So ASL hopes to be involved in that. And then, of course, as you mentioned, this wind energy, we've been involved for a number of years now in supporting potential producers of wind energy in creating access to remote locations. And so we're already using our mats and our solutions and our capabilities to get into some of these spots. And we see that growing tremendously as we go from putting up meteorological towers, whether they're tilt up or dropped in, into the full wind energy development and creating an access solution that doesn't damage the ground around it. You can put them down for 10 years, but if you want, you can pick them up and the ground looks like it was. You're not doing any major damage to the earth around it. So it's really a wonderful product and a great solution. And we see that as just tremendous growth in the next few years.
It is fascinating. So that's the ASL Innovations division, where the composite airport systems are your mainstay of your business. Can you explain to us?
That's ASL Energy. That's ASL Energy is where those mats are.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So let's take a look into the innovation side, where we're looking at the composite airport systems themselves. How can you explain to us how that technology actually works?
Yeah, the whole concept is that we're taking an existing product and modifying it, and of course proving it, to use it in creating a modular and economically viable runway system for remote locations, where it would be cost prohibitive to use traditional methods such as paving, asphalt, or concrete. And we talked about the reasons why a gravel airstrip isn't necessarily the ideal solution. So
Right.
the system involves using thousands of very large, very heavy interlocking panels, and they can be installed by a very small team of local people. ASL Innovations would really just provide the oversight, and the system can be installed in days. With a relatively small team and readily available equipment. There's no special training involved other than to ensure it's done properly. And that's a really important part to us, is we don't want to have to fly in and rescue something if something goes wrong. We want this to be installed and maintained by any local populations where you are, whether it's a community or hamlet or an industrial setting such as a remote mine. It's really meant to be used by the people there.
So primarily remote locations across Canada, that's your marketplace?
That's our initial focus. So we've identified 9 key surfaces that we're going to start on over the next 12 to 18 months. And we're working with different levels of the government to help these communities get the funding to invest in these capital projects in the north. But the solution is economically viable, and that was really important to us. It's not something that only a government could afford. It's something that a company, whether you're a large mine or a remote hydroelectric dam, could use it instead of a gravel runway or in addition to. And so it's a global solution. So once we're complete with our Canadian focus, we will then immediately move to a worldwide market.
Okay. So how would a mining company use it, as an example?
It's the exact same solution as one of these remote communities. So depending on their location, the mats would be shipped in or trucked in or even potentially flown in, depending on where they are, and laid out, installed within certainly under 2 weeks, depending on what your needs are. And then they just start landing their a modern jet, like a 737-800 on it.
Wow, that is amazing. It's like remote airports.
That's what it is. If you can find a lot of information on costs and projects for remote airports that have been installed, and you'll see them go up to $100 million to install a remote runway or a remote airport. And you can imagine that's not realistic for a hamlet of 1,000 people in northern Canada. So that's the solution that we're trying to provide, is to bring that down to an affordable place, and not just to be a gravel runway with limited access, but to actually allow access in there to regular commercial jets.
This is like going out in the future here now, but as you know, we're developing technology to have flying vehicles and all kinds of new flying aerospace vehicles, or I don't know if you want to call them planes,
drones, or
whatever they are. So how would this impact? Do you think that they would come together, the new innovation when it comes to flying vehicles, new sort of custom or remote airport landing strips? Is that they'll merge.
Yeah, and then that's a big part of who we are. I mean, we're an innovations company, and so we're not just looking at, let's say a jet today. We're looking at, well, what do the future aircraft look like? We're already, seeing them used for helicopter landing pads, but what
Right.
about vertical takeoff in jets and modern fighter jets, for instance, for sovereignty in Canada's north, or even take it a next step further, what is the next form of propulsion or transportation. So while we're always making sure that the current system works and is safe and is appropriate, we've got an eye on the future, and we've got several versions planned for how to continue and how to make sure that we're always servicing our clients' needs, and not just today, but what they could be in the future.
So this is such an interesting thing for remote locations. How do people learn about you? How do they understand that this technology is actually available and it could give them unprecedented access in their region? How do they? What's your, I guess, market penetration plan?
Yeah, it's a real challenge for us because right now, if you asked almost anyone on the street, even people in the industry, what are the options for a runway, they'll say it's gravel or it's paved.
Right.
And people don't generally know that there's other options out there. So it's an incredible effort that we have to do to get our word and our name out there. And right now, we're going to different trade events. I'll be presenting at the Northern Air Transportation Association later this month.
Okay.
Um, and we started right here in St. John's at the Maritime Arctic and Security Conference, which is a CATA event, and we presented there last year. We'll present again this year. So it's a constant effort. We are always looking for champions and people to say, hey, this is a really incredible idea. Tell your friends about it. Obviously we have a website and social media presence, but we're looking to grow that in the coming months as well.
So I would imagine that you would want to identify all the airports and possible airport locations and all the mega projects happening in remote locations.
Yeah, absolutely. And so these runways that we've identified, I mean, for a sense of scale, there are about 1,000 gravel runways in Canada.
Okay.
There's roughly 117 roughly that different stakeholders within the government have identified as critical in northern Canada. And we've
Okay.
narrowed that down further to 8 runways or 9 surfaces in total that we're going to focus on. And it's not just a combination, or it's not just communities, but there's also critical minerals mines involved in that list as well. And so where they can service not just their mine, but the community nearby, and get dual benefit.
Okay, interesting. So what is the composite actually made of, and how does it work, and who's actually making it? Where does it all come from?
So a really important part of this process to us is that we want it made in Canada, and really we want it made right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we're working with a partner who's in Slovenia. It's actually an Austrian company, and they're a world leader in technical plastics. They're
Okay.
not a company that many people have heard of. It's called Isocon, but for a sense of scale, they make 60% of the world's skis and snowboards. So
Oh,
these people really, really know what they're doing. And so we actually have an agreement with them that not only are they going to work with us to hone this product into what it needs to be, but to manufacture it right here in Canada. And I've actually got a little piece of one of these mats, and it's hard to see and get a sense of it, but it feels like one of those cutting boards you get at Dollarama, where it's a bit slippery, except for where they've put the traction right on it.
right.
And so this piece is a very small piece. It's about 2 inches thick. So it's
Mm.
one of our mats cut in half. So they're about 4 inches thick, and they weigh about 800 pounds each when they're fully assembled. And they
Wow.
overlap and interconnect. There's a lot of traction. There's a lot of testing that goes on to ensure that tires don't slide on them, that they don't get punctured.
Mhm.
Um, but again, our real plan was that we wanted something that existed, that was already proven, and so that's what we've started
Okay.
with Ithacon is from this product, and when you see these panels laid down, 800 pounds, you can't bend it, you can't move it. But believe it or not, you can take them and fold them right in half, and they just go right back to their shape. So they're incredibly flexible and resilient. And that's why we chose them for Northern Canada. They have to, be able to last in these incredibly harsh conditions.
Right.
It's one thing to work here in Newfoundland where we're quite temperate, but if you go up to -40, -60, -80, it's a whole other set of challenges.
A whole other ball game. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was very interesting seeing a clip, seeing what that actually looks like in your hands. So I guess those little round pieces on the top is what causes the traction, I guess, the ability to actually stop on
That's
those.
right. That's right. And this is quite rough, even between these treads. There's actually a lot of, they call it micro traction within it. A lot of science went into developing these, and this side of it with these sort of oblong ovals was actually originally designed for a steel tracked vehicle. So right now, this is the sort of piece that we'd use to drive a 40-ton excavator over it. They've been out in the field for 10, 15 years, and they just haven't reached their end of their life yet. They're not breaking, and that's designed for a track vehicle. There are other ones. The other side of the mat, they're actually reversible, has much smaller traction, and those are designed for a rubber tire, like a car or a truck.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
we're testing it to determine which is the best one for an aircraft tire, and in snow and in ice and mud even.
So would it only be aircrafts, or would you be able to use it on a construction site? Say, for example, remote construction happening. Would you also
That is exactly what they're used for today, is construction sites and remote locations. We've implemented these in mines in northern Labrador. We've implemented them in mines here in Newfoundland and Central. Other companies you'll see, they've been installed for oil derricks and drilling on land, and they're incredibly strong products. And they're used all over in construction sites. And we're not limited to just these ultra heavy duty ones. We have lighter ones that are more like a sheet of plywood. And so you could pick those up by hand if you wanted to, drive into your backyard. You don't need to worry about tearing up your grass. You just drop them down on the ground, drive right over them. If you got a rock slinger or a mini excavator, drive right over them, and you won't tear up your lawn. So there's a whole line of them, and they're used in myriad of solutions today in construction.
So theoretically, could you just build new roads with it as opposed to a gravel road and say, okay, well, this is what my road looks like. It's a composite road.
Yeah, you could, and there's been roads up to, I think, 2 or 3 kilometers built on them.
Okay.
The issue is they're not inexpensive. They're not
Right.
necessarily for every location, and in the same way that our composite airport system isn't ideal for a very easily accessible solution, because what we're trying to do is find a solution to get it in a really remote place. So if you compare it to paving a runway in St. John's, it's not going to have the same return on investment. Same thing as if you're making a road on them. If you're in a place that has tremendous access to heavy equipment and aggregates and crushers, that will be a good way to go. But if you're in a place where you don't want to destroy the landscape and want to lay down a temporary 1-2 kilometer road, and temporary could be 2 years or 3 years, you can do that with our mats, and they can go around corners and right over bogs. They're absolutely incredible. And then everyone just pick them up.
That's what I was thinking about, especially in bog locations where you really don't have a good solution for a bog area. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to be able to have something like that is just kind of takes all that issue of the bog out of the equation. It would seem to me, I haven't seen it in action myself, but it would seem to me that any sort of boggy area that would be an ultimate fix.
Yeah, they're quite incredible for really soft, boggy, muddy locations,
Yeah.
and not just because they're buoyant and large, so they float incredibly well. They've been used for concert venues where people will actually put a stage just floating on the water, or picnics, and they just float on the water really, really, really well. But because they're interconnected, if you're going over a long stretch of bog, it's not just the buoyancy of one that needs to hold up your vehicle. They're spread out across the few hundred meters or the kilometer, whatever it needs to be. And yeah, they're fantastic for traversing incredibly soft surfaces that you wouldn't expect to get across otherwise.
Interesting. What's the coolest application that you've seen?
I think one of my favorites that I've seen was, there was a cross country running team, and they set up a track, and so they ran down a bank across the mats, across a lake, and back up the other side. And it wasn't this highly technical thing, but it was really neat to see this team of young people, or an actual cross country race, run across a lake. And I mean, you can imagine how much they liked that as well. That was one of my favorites.
Wow,
Um,
that's
it, it,
interesting.
it's exciting. And I mean, the traditional uses are in construction and muddy and bog, and we know that
Mhm.
works, and there's lots of neat stuff. But I thought that was a really neat one, seeing young people run across a lake.
It is indeed. So who would be your typical clients right now for the
So
application?
right now, as I mentioned, we work with mining companies and drilling companies, but we also work with construction companies who are trying to get access, whether it's to a building without tearing up the lawn, or to get into a remote site like a wind tower. So it's
Mhm.
really generally commercial that we're working with, large corporations.
Right. Now, I know that this composite has, considered the environment and its impact. What have you built into that equation?
So a lot of people, hear about high density polyethylene, and I mentioned it looks and feels like a cutting board, those white cutting boards that you'll find around the house in Dollarama.
Mhm.
And there can be a stigma around it, because ultimately it is a type of plastic. Um, our mats have no waste in the manufacturing. And so what that means is every shred, every fiber is captured and put back into the mat. So they already incorporate recycled materials. At the end of their life, they're 100% recyclable. And we
Oh,
actually have a recycling system right here in town. You can shred them, grind them, and then we ship them right back to the manufacturer, who makes new mats. And some of our lighter duty mats are already made of recycled materials.
hmm.
So it's a very low energy process to recycle them. It's not like reheating steel or aluminum, which is infinitely recyclable. You can drop these in the shredder. It's a mechanical process. It's very easy to do, and you just press them again with a low temperature. So they're incredibly environmentally sustainable, in that you can just keep reusing them and reapplying them for years on end.
Interesting, interesting. Well, that's good to know. Do you think that there's any opportunity for them to be used for other types of pedways, say, for example, on an oil rig, or looking into the future now where we have that are going to be built for wind energy, that kind of thing? When you look at the future of all of what is about to be built, um, and like you said, we have Bay du Nord coming up. We have these wind energy projects all about to emerge. Where do you see the opportunity there?
So as part of our innovation side, we are looking at subsea matting and how we can use these, not just subsea, but on rigs and on decks. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of due diligence that needs to go into that.
Hmm.
Um, fire retardants and wear and tear and UV protection. So we have a lot of that, but that's a bit of a process. That's what we're looking towards in the future, and how we can incorporate them in a offshore or subsea setting. And as you've mentioned, with camps and whatnot, that's what they're there for. We use them in our recycling system. You lay them on the ground, you have a nice dry place to work from. You can set up temporary shelters right on top of them. In fact, we've worked for many years with another Newfoundland company called Dynamic Air Shelters, and they make inflatable structures, and they send them all over the world, and they'll use a composite floor on them, because they can pick it up, drop it down, very easy to install, and it'll last well, it'll outlive all of us. That's for sure. And you can just keep
Mhm.
reusing them for different locations. So for setting up a camp or a new facility, they're ideal. You can create your roads in, cover up the muddy spots as you progress with your construction. Move them to the next spot where you need them. So
Mhm.
they're ready to go for that, and we actually have them here in Canada already.
Wow, so interesting. It boggles my mind because I guess that really, I mean, you guys, your doors are open that, you wouldn't know all the different applications. But for people who are listening to the show today, they could be thinking, well, how does this apply to my company? How could I incorporate this into my company? I need access to whatever it is, XYZ. You could get any kind of inquiry. Uh,
Yeah,
no-
and we do. We use them. I mean, we're very pleased that we use them in a lot of local events. If you go to, the Churchill Park Music Festival or the St. John Folk Festival, they are all over the fields there.
okay.
And we're really pleased with how they've gone, and they seem to be pleased with us too, so they keep coming back. So we're hoping that we can continue that for the 2024 concert season as well. But it's like you said, you can use them for any number of things from light duty to heavy duty.
So the concert ones, though, they're different, right? They're different than the.
We have some lighter ones. Say if you're walking in, we've put hundreds of them down in past years at each of those events, and
Mhm.
so you can walk in on them and not go track up the grass or be walking in mud. Those are a light duty, and then we just interconnect them. We also have a medium duty that you could put your stage on, so that you have a very firm footing to build on top of, and then at the end of it, pick them up and move them out.
Right. So is part of the appeal that like you don't rip up your lawn after you pick them up and go. They keep everything intact. Everything is maintained.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's really important to put them down early, because you could imagine once you've created mud on grass, you've got mud on grass.
Yeah.
They'll prevent you from sinking or from really destroying it, and they'll ensure it stays flat. But if you put them down in advance, you can pick them right up afterwards. Your grass is there, depending on how long you've left it, but certainly not destroyed. No tire tracks, no marks in it at all.
Mhm. So it's concerts, it's airports, it's mining sites. It's the list is really endless, isn't it?
Yes.
Any place that you need access for, or a temporary location, a remote location, that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
there's, and I mean, there's not just one product, as you've mentioned, Tina. We've got products that are specifically made for events, where you have built-in cable trays, and we've sold thousands of square feet to companies like Gillette Stadium, the home of the New England Patriots. They put them down on the field so that they can have a concert. We supported the Blue Jays in replacing their big screen in the center. So they're used all over the place. Ice rinks, you name it.
That is so interesting. So, do they keep them after the fact, or do they rent them, or do they buy them?
It entirely depends on the company and the application.
Okay.
Some companies just have a short-term thing. If you're a construction company, it might make sense that you own them. I mentioned Gillette Stadium. They own them. They use them all the time. They put them out. They bring them back. They put them out.
Right.
Um, and other, if you wanted to do something in your backyard, probably just want to rent them. It's a few dollars a day, and you lay them out and do your work and haul them back up when you're done.
Hmm. Wow. That is cool. So cool. Okay. As you look out into the future, in terms of ASL Energy and Innovations, what do you like? What's the most exciting things for you guys on the horizon? Where do you see the business going in the next 5 years?
From an ASL Energy point of view, I mentioned earlier that we've got a recycling system here in Newfoundland, and that's that's a really exciting project for us. We're taking ocean waste that's on the beaches, and some of it's still in the ocean here in Newfoundland, and
Mhm.
we're taking it out of those waters, taking it off our beaches, and recreating a new usable product. It's actually known as upcycling. It's a project where it's really near and dear to our heart, because it helps our communities, it helps our environment, and it reuses waste. So that's something that we're really excited on expanding, not just here in Newfoundland, but across the country.
Yeah.
Um,
Before you go on to the next thing, let's go into that for a second. So how do you gather that waste and how does it work?
a lot of the waste is already gathered in stockpiles all around the island. And
Okay.
what we've done is we've actually created a mobile system that shreds it and grinds it. And so we'll actually bring the recycling unit to these locations, to these stockpiles, because the problem if you're shipping, large pipes or large pieces of plastic is you're really just shipping air. And
Right.
so a truck that might take off a whole bunch of this black pipe might be able to take, a few tons at a time. We can get that up to over 30 tons on a single truck just by recycling it in place. So the economics of it are dramatically improved, and then we can ship it to Canadian facilities, to any facility anywhere in the world, in an economical way. So, a lot of our initial locations are stockpiled already, and that's the problem. But there are some that are still out in the ocean, and we're working with the owners of those and the communities around them to find a good way. We know how to do it, but to plan it out, to get these out of the water and into our machines, and to put our machine in the nearest spot to get them maximize the return for our clients as well.
Wow, that's super cool project. Okay, anything else?
So that's one we're extremely excited about. From the ASL Innovations, I mean, our whole sort of raison d'être is the Composite Airport System,
Right.
and it's coming online in the next next 12 to 18 months. We're going to have a surface out. We're going to see planes traveling across it, and it really represents an entire paradigm shift for air transport. It's financially viable now to effectively have a hard surface in a remote location. If you're a mine, their issues, their operational costs are astronomical. Even on mundane things like gravel getting into the door, you can picture workers walking up from a gravel tarmac in their boots, and it's muddy and it's wet, and they track it in, but the planes are actually having trouble closing their door because rocks are getting in. It's
Hmm.
stuff that you wouldn't even think of. So even just putting a surface down, and allowing you to economically and effectively pave a surface is unheard of.
Yeah.
And we don't see this as just limited to north, but any remote location. And we do ask ourselves why we didn't start in the Caribbean quite often, where they don't have a lot of rock. But maybe that'll be phase 2, is Turks and Caicos.
Yes, sign me up for that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting. So what would you say to, the listeners on a final note? What to companies out there that just might be thinking this is a possibility, or should they be getting in touch with you? What would you encourage them to do? What would you like to say to them?
Yeah, we encourage everyone and anyone to reach out. I mean, we have our website, asl.energy and aslinnovations.ca, and we encourage you to come take a look and connect with us. If you're in the construction industry and you're using plywood to drive over it, you are wasting a huge amount of money. So please reach out to us if you have any questions. It never hurts to ask. TJ is an expert in this stuff. We have an amazing team who can support you and find you a solution and give you a sense of the cost savings that you can expect. And it's the same thing on the innovation side. If you're looking to pave a runway, to improve a taxiway or apron, reach out to me, aslinnovations.ca. I'll get in touch with you right away and explain whatever it is you could need to know about it. We're really excited.
Fantastic. Well, I guess that's it for me. I think I've learned so much about your company now, and I'm sure that a lot of people will from this spotlight on ASL. It's incredible work that you guys are doing. So kudos to you guys for being so innovative and creative, and I think very visionary in your approach as to what the future is going to need when it comes to any sort of, you know, space, whether it's a landing space or a driving space or a walking space, whatever it is. Excuse me. It's so um, I mean, the applications are just mind blowing. Really, it's an endless thing. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and we're really excited. I'm so glad we got this opportunity, Gina. I'm glad you invited us, and it's been such a pleasure.
yeah. Well, it's clear that your company is paving the way for a more sustainable and accessible energy future, which is right along with our conversation here at the OGM. So that's it, our chat for today. Join us next time for our great minds as we continue to explore groundbreaking ideas and initiatives transforming the energy landscape. I'm Tina Olivero, your host, signing off until next time. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Noah.
Thanks, Gina.